Hey YouTubers, it's Charlie. So Zack Snyder released the first official pic of Jason Momoa's Aquaman last night, and the picture says, "Unite the Seven." What does that mean? Mostly the original 7 members of the Justice League. There's a bit of a twist to that, because in the original Justice League, the lineup was Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Flash, Green Lantern, and Martian Manhunter. But notice that of all the solo films that Warner Brothers has lined up, there is no Martian Manhunter solo film, so he is probably not going to appear in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice. So, slight tweak to the Justice League lineup. It looks a little bit more like the lineup of the modern Justice League. They're just trading Cyborg for Martian Manhunter. Why would they do that, you ask? Changed so much about what people love about the original Justice League. I'd say mostly because that was in 1960, and more people are familiar with the Cyborg character now than are with the Martian Manhunter character. Yes, Martian Manhunter has appeared in a lot of the animated movies, and he appeared on the Smallville live-action television series, but I think largely due to the popularity of the Teen Titans comics, as well as all the Teen Titans shows, most of the people that Warner Brothers expects to go see this film, mainly young males, are more familiar with the Cyborg character. And they feel like they can market a Cyborg solo film better than they can market a solo Martian Manhunter film. You have to imagine that the characters that they put in their Justice League have to be able to lead their own solo titles, and in order to make a successful solo film, they have to get people who have never read a comic book and have no idea who the Cyborg character is to go out and see a Cyborg movie. That's the challenge that Warner Brothers has right now. I mean, people who have never read a Justice League comic probably have a vague idea who Cyborg is, but in order for a movie to make like $500, $600, $700 million, they have to get people that don't go to superhero movies to go to a superhero movie. And in order for that to happen, they have to get people to connect with the character, and they feel like it's easier to get people to connect with an African-American football star who gets turned into a monster than to get them to connect with a green person from Mars. That, you know, the origin story of Cyborg, just easier to connect with for your average viewer than it is for the origin story of Martian Manhunter. That's just my opinion, but on paper, it just feels like they think it's easier to do Cyborg than it is to do Martian Manhunter. Here's an interesting thought too. Do you think that that's why we're seeing more Cyborg in the comics than Martian Manhunter? Like they want people, by the time we get to this Cyborg solo film, to be more aware of his character. So they're downplaying Martian Manhunter. Marvel Comics is kind of doing that thing where they're slowly moving the comics to be more congruous with what's going on in the films, although the comics will always be their own thing. You have to remember that no matter how well comics sell, they make a fraction, like a small fraction of the money that Warner Brothers and Disney, Marvel make on their films, TV, everything else. So that's why you shouldn't worry too much about what's going on in the comics having any bearing about what's going on in the films or the TV shows. And that's across the board. That's Marvel and Warner Brothers. If you haven't read it, the original Justice League makeup was actually pretty interesting. They debuted in The Brave and the Bold, number 28 in 1960. They fought Starro. They haven't confirmed which big villain, Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, are going to be fighting in Batman vs. Superman: Dawn of Justice, but the rumor is the Lex Luthor will be involved in the creation of a Doomsday-like character. Whether or not it's like the Doomsday in the comics, I have no idea. The weird thing about the movies right now is that kryptonite does not exist. When Zack Snyder made the first Man of Steel movie, he's like, no, there is no such thing as kryptonite. The rumor is that eventually synthetic kryptonite will exist. Like Lex Luthor will find a way to synthesize kryptonite because of what happened with the Kryptonian terraformers in the first Man of Steel film. They were slowly converting the Earth into something that was just like Krypton. And because like each of these new films, like these Justice League character films, will flow from each other, the creation of kryptonite will flow from the logic of what happened during Man of Steel. You have to remember that this is a superhero film, so sprinkle some movie logic on top of that. Really, when you think about it, Jason Momoa is probably one of the perfect people to be Aquaman. He's from Hawaii, and don't you think that Aquaman would be from some sort of Pacific island nation, regardless of where it was in the world? As you can see from the picture, they do try to honor his scaled costume, but the style just fits with the tone that Zack Snyder's going for. Like, he really tunes his colors down. It's much more like the 300 version of what Aquaman would look like, as opposed to like the cartoon version with the orange costume. Because we're meeting him for the first time in Batman vs. Superman, we'll probably get something of an origin story, maybe some flashbacks, and then the solo film, the solo Aquaman film, will deal with the rest of that. Here's an interesting question. Why are they introducing Aquaman first, and why does it say Unite the Seven? Probably because Aquaman is going to be the one to bring them together. That's an interesting thought, because Wonder Woman is the diplomat, so you think that she'd be the one to bring them together, but she's more of a warrior. Batman's more of a loner, and Superman, he's a broody alien that tries to take all of the world's problems on himself. The difference between them and Aquaman is that 70% of the Earth is water, and he is king of all of that. So technically, he is the king of the Earth. When you think about it that way, the Earth is one organism. There are no nations, no boundary lines. It's all one big group of people and organisms working together. So logically, Aquaman would be the one to say, hey, we are all the same. We need to work together. I mean, it's not going to be as simple as that, but yeah, Aquaman, king of 70% of the Earth, much bigger than the other 30% that the other superheroes live on. Add to that Aquaman is one of the few characters that's just as powerful as Superman or Wonder Woman. Zack Snyder, whenever he was defending the idea of Aquaman to this weird radio station, he was talking about how Aquaman's trident can pierce Superman's skin. So it's like they have some sort of equal footing. It'll be interesting to see because there's no such thing as kryptonite right now. So technically, under most circumstances, Superman is invincible. Batman vs. Superman is going to change that. Like, we'll probably see some kryptonite. We'll see a villain that Superman can't beat by himself, which is why they have to start working together. Then obviously that's going to lead into the Justice League film and then all the solo films. So think of Batman vs. Superman as like a soft intro to Justice League. So everything in the story leads to that. Everything has the goal of uniting the Seven. What I'm really interested to see is if they go with the idea of the Watchtower in outer space, or if they have something that's a little more practical on Earth. The Watchtower didn't come till much later in the comics. Originally, they all lived on Earth. So I think that's what'll end up happening. For those that are really upset that Martian Manhunter has no part in these films, as far as we know right now, I think eventually they'll get there. I think they're just like a little bit behind Marvel in terms of rolling out the more fantastical things. Like they haven't gotten to magic yet. They do have their Black Adam, so eventually we'll get there. So here's my big question for you guys. What do you think about Jason Momoa's look? And what do you think about the idea of the 7 original Justice League members teaming up by the end of the film? I feel like they've cast a bunch of great actors. Like they have a bunch of characters that can carry solo films. But I'll be really interested to see what it all looks like when they get on film, because most of it is going to focus on Batman and Superman. There's no way that they can give each character equal screen time. So a lot of these other Justice League people will be background players until they get to their solo films and until we get to Justice League. Here's something funny to think about too. If you feel like 7 Justice League characters is a lot of characters to have in a movie, there's going to be like 9 to 10 members of the Avengers in Age of Ultron, depending on whether or not you count War Machine as a member of the Avengers. So it can totally be done. They can totally have a bunch of characters in a film and it can still work. And if you want more proof than that, Bryan Singer's original X-Men films were amazing. He made great ensemble films. It's a very different skill for a director to have, to be able to work with that many big characters on screen at once. And for those that are upset about the TV characters like Stephen Amell, Grant Gustin not being in the films, don't worry. By the time those films come out, they'll be so incredibly popular, Stephen Amell, Grant Gustin, that it won't even matter. Like, they won't even care. The Flash is like the most popular TV show that DC has had in forever. And it's only in season 1, so he is totally not bitter about any of that stuff. So I'm still going to be doing my Arrow Flash Q&A. I'll be sure to answer questions about Justice League stuff in that too, so feel free to ask. Be sure to subscribe to get it. I'll post it later today. I'll be posting it like tonight. So while you guys wait for that to drop, you can click here to catch up on The Flash, and you can click here to catch up on Arrow this week. Thank you so much for watching. So let's all high five. I'll see you guys tonight.